So for the first question, can Blessing please introduce herself and give a quick intro?
Hey, first of all, thank you really so much for having me, and I really love just listening to you guys introduce yourselves. You know, hearing that people are like, yeah, I don't really know. I'm just here to find out more. That's really, I really like hearing that, because it means that I'm still helpful. And I like to feel helpful. So it's nice to know that I have information that I can share with and help you guys. Some background on me. I don't know. I describe myself as a really serious person. So I have wanted to be a barrister since I was 7 for various reasons. I think when I came to England when I was 4, I sort of just was reading a lot already. Like I was kind of ahead at school, because I was born in Botswana, so I was a bit ahead at school. And so I was thinking about quite serious, deep things. I would read these like big books and whatever. So that's what got me into reading. And I think becoming a barrister and reading are like hand in hand, because I love to just know the answers to pretty much everything. And if I don't know the answer, I will read until I find it. So I've never lost that interest, and that is why the bar route has always intrigued me and has been what I want to do the most of. Those of you who've had experience in commercial areas would know, especially on the solicitor side, that it's a business. So you're not necessarily valuable because you can sit yourself down for 3 days and totally immerse yourself in an area of law. That's not necessarily what you're being paid for. Whereas with barristers, I like that that's their job. Usually the answer isn't there, and your client needs something, and you have got to predict what the judge is going to say. And the judge will only ever refer to what's written in law, or if it's not written in law, then they're going to contrast and compare cases. So the judges are reading. And the law students in the room will know when you see at the bottom of a judgment when it says, their lordships took time for consideration, or time to consider their judgment or whatever. It's just like a way of referring that, yeah, they're going off to go read stuff now and to see what they're going to back up and what they're going to go for. So that whole element of the profession is what relates to me. And is the thing that I will never get bored of. And because I'll never get bored of doing that, that's why I know I still want to be a barrister. I think the day that I actively don't find learning new things interesting, I will maybe consider maybe I'll become a professional Instagram baddie or something like that. I don't know. But for now, I'm nerdy. If you've seen me on socials, I refer to myself as the chic legal geek. Don't laugh at me. But it's because I just want to really emphasize that if you're the kind of person that is nerdy, you are a bit geeky, you are I like to read, I like to understand, I like to know, and then communicate that to other people, that's cool. And that's my whole shtick. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's me. That's why I want to be a barrister. In terms of where I'm at on the journey, the interesting thing about the bar profession, I was just talking to my good friend who's at a Magic Circle. He's just become an associate. And we were laughing about how in his side of the legal world, if you're valuable for the business, you'll stay around. The personality element isn't so much there. But the thing with the bar is it's a personality exercise. So once you've completed all the hurdles and jumped through, you now have to get pupilage. And if you guys think back to your entrance interview, think that, but 4 or 5 of them, and they're all deciding not whether they want you to join the college for 3, 4, 5 years. They're deciding whether they want to work next to you for the rest of their lives. And that is the one thing that the bar has that the other side doesn't have. That tenancy decision is called tenancy because once you've completed your pupilage, you're taken on for life, essentially. No one can kick you out unless you break the rules or do something nuts. But you can't practice as an independent advocate until all of these 20 or 30 other people have decided they want to work with you for the rest of their lives. So that's what makes pupilage uniquely weird. I'm on my second year of applying. I think I'll apply again next year. I might scare the crap out of my mother and skip a year of applying. But essentially the context there is that you have 5 years to apply before you have to go to the Bar Standards Board and say, I need an extension of time. So I would say, just before we get started, before anything else happens and we talk about why we want to do this or not, normalize the fact that getting into this profession is uniquely hard, uniquely strange, and has 0% to do with how good you are and how smart you are. Normalize yourself, get used to that. It took me a good few years to get to this point, but now I'm at that point. So I've separated my sense of self to whether or not I currently have a pupilage. It's hard to do because everything in your mind is going to be telling you the reason that you don't have it is because you're not good enough, they're never going to accept you, you start to like dislike yourself. No, if you are qualified to apply for pupilage, you are already ridiculously overqualified for pretty much anything you want to do at that point. So never forget the power is 1,000,000,000% in your hands at every stage of your barrister journey. If you want to be like, ugh, sack this, do something else and come back, please do that. I currently can't because, like I mentioned, my mum would kill me. I wasn't even allowed to do a gap year. So I have no choice. I will apply until I get it. But if you do have that flexibility in your life plan, someone mentioned that they don't know whether they want to be an academic or not. Just again, the bar is full of academics. They go have careers for however many years and then they come over. So yeah, very long, windy introduction over. But I wanted to get that point out first because I want you to bear that in mind with your questions and what we talk about today. Bear in mind that the bar is weird like that. It's the only place where you can walk in being worth your weight in gold and feel like you're worth that much. That's the only thing. So it's all it's a mentality thing. So yeah, just bear that in mind with your question because I think that it's important. I really want to encourage people to take the bar off a pedestal and focus on you, yourself, and your value. I'll shut up now.
Awesome. That was amazing. Thank you. But can we bring it back to some basics for some people that don't know? What would you say a barrister is? Like, what is that job? It would be really useful to compare that to a commercial solicitor, things like that.
Okay, so to do that, I'll give you guys just a rundown example of a typical scenario that illustrates when a solicitor would come in and when a barrister would come in. So let's take, I don't know, I'm trying to think, family law. No, what's more interesting? Let's take crime. That's a good one. So you, Mr. A and Mrs. B are married. One day, Mr. A shoots Mrs. B. Okay, Mrs. B is dead now. There's a police investigation. The second that Mr. A is arrested, he is going to have an interview with the police. So at that point, he would instruct a solicitor. So you can consider solicitors to be the person with the closest proximity to the client's personal problems, if that makes sense. Because solicitors, it's inherent in the word, they solicit. So they, they say, I'm here, I can help you. They go out and find clients, they do the groundwork. All of that work the solicitor does may not need a barrister for quite a significant portion of time. For example, Mr. A may, there may be an extensive investigation. He may not have a trial date fixed, or maybe the police haven't charged him. There's a lot of things that can go into what happens before legal proceedings begin. Some solicitors have what are called higher rights, so they've got rights of audience. These solicitors can do minor matters. So they can appear before judges, for example, in the magistrate's court, the lowest level of court, in criminal aspect. and they can, do basic things in that sense, oral advocacy wise. The idea is, with our legal system being the way it is, we don't just cut and dry apply the law. There are nuances and there are mitigating elements and there are things that require the person who is being charged needs to communicate with the tribunal. Sorry, I'm using stupid law words. Right, the judge. So the person being charged isn't necessarily going to do that themselves, because it's accepted that solicitors, be that they are legal professionals, they're knowledgeable, they know, they may not necessarily have that particular skill of advocacy, which is where Mr. A needs someone to speak to the judge on his behalf and, as far as possible, mitigate or provide a defense for him. Maybe Mr. A needs someone to point out that the police evidence is insufficient, and actually he said that he was at Sainsbury's. The police have not proved that he wasn't there. Someone needs to intercede on behalf of Mr. A. Now, solicitors, this is a slight tension between the two. I'm sure if you asked a lot of solicitors, they would say, yeah, I could do that. But the thing is, like I mentioned earlier, the judge has to make a decision based on the law. The judge knows all the law. The judge knows that there are inconsistencies in the law. The judge knows that if the defense was to stand up and say, but Mr. A, I don't know, I know this isn't legal and it's not technically correct, but let's say this, Mr. A had a defense because Mrs. B was coming at him with a knife. The judge has to apply a significant amount of nuance when it comes to application of that law. He has to, I've just said he. She. Let's say she, because you see how, this is the patriarchy, man. But anyway, they have to apply all of these different legal tests. It gets more and more complicated the more and more the situation, the facts complicate. It's not cut and dry. So now here's the situation. Who is going to speak to the judge? Who knows the law just as well as the judge does, possibly better, to the point that they can tell the judge, this is how you should correctly make this judgment. That's where a barrister works. That's a barrister's arena. So that is why barristers are called courtroom advocates. Because whether it's criminal, whether it's family, whether it's high value fraud, it's understood that there's a specialist level of advocacy that is required. And that specialist level of advocacy is what a barrister does that no one else can do. So taking a recent case, completely moving on from crime, the prorogation case of Parliament, Cherry Miller. Now, all of the submissions that were made in the Supreme Court it was a grey area. There was no law, because if there was law, we wouldn't be in this situation. So the barrister's job at that stage is to tell the judge, this is how you should navigate this completely unprecedented area of law. And these are the reasons. I think you should read the cases in this way. That takes so much time and skill to prepare and execute. That's why barristers get specialist training. And that's why only we are allowed to attend certain courts. So, in a nutshell, if that doesn't interest you at all, then you know that you don't want to be a barrister. But if the idea of doing that, with all the unglamorous stuff that comes with it, like hours and hours and hours and hours and bundles of paper and people giving you information last minute and all of this like crazy stuff, yeah, you've got to deal with all of those realities. But if that fundamental thing of being in front of a judge and doing that job makes you think, yeah, that's a bit of me, then yeah, then that is how you can delineate and differentiate. This is what the 30 minutes sleep the other day, because he had to spend the whole night researching a very, very niche area of international company law. You know, barristers do that. He can do that. You know what I mean? But what he doesn't have to do is, once the client has decided to proceed with the claim, he doesn't then have to explain and do back and forth with the judge about all of that law that he just researched to write up. However, a barrister that's been practicing in that area for 10 years, it'll be easy for them to go back and forth with the judge. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, that's the difference between the two. I hope that's helpful. If I'm rambling and just talking utter nonsense, please tell me, so I'll stop.
No. Anyone have any questions at this point, or should I carry on? If everyone's good, just do this. We good? Awesome. Cool. Could you break down the steps of how you actually become a barrister, like from university to like the top of the career? What is?
Yeah, no worries. So step 1 is do a degree and get a 2-1 in that degree. I know there are situations where if you don't get a 2-1, that there's things, it's not the end of the world, it's possible. But to save yourself aggro, get a 2-1 in your degree or higher. Now, once that has been secured, if you did a law degree, you can go to bar school whenever you feel like going to bar school. If you didn't do a law degree, you need to do the GDL, which is the Graduate Diploma in Law, and it converts your undergraduate degree to a law degree with another year of study. Once those are done and you've got those requirements, so that it's the academic requirement. Once you've got those, you now need to go to bar school. The BPTC is the course with all of the mandatory things that you have to do in order to be ready for pupilage. So that's advocacy, drafting, and other types of skills, including 3 horrible centrally assessed assessments from the Bar Standards Board: civil litigation, criminal litigation, and ethics. So you basically have to know all the rules and apply all the rules for 3 hours. Once you've done that, now you're eligible to be called to the bar. So if you think about your colleges, the Inns of Court are based around the colleges. So there are 4 main Inns of Court in central London: Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, Middle Temple, and Inner Temple. And they have the responsibility of calling you to the Bar of England and Wales. So there's this whole fancy procedure, and you've got to bow in front of this guy, and then yay, you're a barrister now, but you cannot practice as a barrister yet. So once you've been called, now you have to complete your pupilage. So you apply for pupilage, however long it takes you, however many times. Once your pupilage is begun, it's split into 2 6-month periods. The first 6, where you're supposed to just watch and learn, and the second 6, when you're on your feet, is the term used, and you've got your wig and you're going out into the courts and you're doing things. After this whole time, you're being assessed for the entire 12 months. After that, once you finish being assessed, you then have a big decision is made. Yay, we want you to be a tenant. Hooray. Now the Bar Standards Board issues you with a certificate. You are now eligible to practice as a barrister in England and Wales. And then once you've got that certificate, you work. And that's the trajectory that you follow. It can take a significant amount of years in between the different stages. The only time constraint is that once you have been called to the bar, you have 5 years to get pupilage, like I mentioned earlier. That's the only time constraint. There are some in respects of your law degree. Sometimes I think if you did a law degree and then it's been like 1 billion years since your law degree, I think there may be something in there. But generally speaking, some people go do a different career. Some people even qualify as solicitors and then cross-qualify back again or whatever. So yeah, but that's the general trajectory that you have to follow.
Okay, cool. What's the pay like? Because I've noticed that barristers in particular are very stingy you talking about this? Like, how does it differ from different areas of the law? Did it concern you? Did it appeal to you? That type of stuff.
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, people don't really talk about that, but they'll be like, oh, you'll definitely be on this amount. Okay, so here's the extra tricky part. Like I mentioned, barristers are self-employed. Really, they can kind of charge you whatever, but there will be an industry standard for levels of seniority and, you know, areas of expertise, yada, yada, yada. Between different areas of law, the first distinction to make is whether work is legally funded by legal aid or whether it is privately funded. Publicly funded work, there is no money in that work. And that's not to say it's not the most important work. I'm just telling you, be prepared for a pupilage to have an award. They call that the amount that they will give you and guarantee to be £12,000 in legally aided work. By way of contrast, if you were to do a commercial pupilage, you would be anywhere between 70 to 100K as your pupilage award. So there's the discrepancy straight off the bat with the bar. It's nuts. You could have some barristers they're minted, and some barristers making nothing. So it's all about being smart, running yourself like a business, understanding what are the running costs for you, and how do you navigate your career in that way. The thing that barristers have to get them work are called clerks. So you'll see chambers always talk about their clerks. Think about clerks kind of like your talent scouts. So when solicitors, so let's think back to our fictional Mr. A. Mr. A needs their solicitor's done the work. Now the solicitor needs a barrister. It looks like Mr. A could have some way of, he could have a defense, but the defense is very complex in law. Now they need an advice from a barrister. They need someone to tell them, look, what do you reckon? Now, once the solicitor's making that decision, they will call up clerks that they know and they trust, and they'll be like, look, can you send me someone? I've got this murder trial, da-da-da-da-da. The clerk will say no more. Blessing is really good. I think she's just done a case like this. She did a hearing like this. She secured an acquittal. I think you should take her on. So that's what clerks do. Does that make sense? So when it comes to making money as a barrister, you know, I've seen it myself. I've sat there and watched these barristers just run in. They don't know what is going on. But their clerks are like, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. And the barrister's like, thank you very much. And then they go off and they work. So when you're looking for a chambers, you also need to look for good clerks. Because if the people who know how to sell you, that's how you'll make your money. By selling yourself, marketing yourself, building a brand for yourself, and having people around you. Like if you think about, you know, anyone, if you think about, like, for example, rappers, like when they drop, or any music artist, when they drop, they've got a team, they've got people, and that is what a barrister needs from that chamber setting to make that money. Because then your name sells itself. An interesting thing that the bar has, you may not have heard of it, it's the cab rank rule. And it basically means if you need a barrister and somebody gives you an instruction and it's in your area of law and they can pay your fees, you've got to do it. So that's a random fun thing the bar has. You've got to do it. So it's to stop discrimination and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. All right. So just to reiterate the word, I don't know. If anyone has any questions, make sure you just say it back down in the chat if you want anything clarified. All right. So what area of law do you want to specialize in? How did you come to that decision? What was your journey with that process?
That's a good question, because there's two different versions of me that answers that question. So just taking that nerdy, bookish version of me, it's been constitutional and public law since day one. The state is wayward. I can't even get my head around the scale of powers that our government has. I mean, the coronavirus legislation, which we'll talk about later, but just gives you an idea, you know, they can just do things, man, like some seriously messed up stuff. And I just think it's really important to have the kinds of voices that challenge that, but challenge it in a way that it's like, you know better than this. You're not going to pretend, because when it comes to the state, they're given a lot of leeway because, you know, it's the state. So I'm interested in that law because I'm interested in holding it accountable and being like, no, you can't just kill people en masse institutionally and then just pretend it's fine. No, you just can't do that. So that's why that part of me is like public law till I ride or die. Like, I love that area. I'm so serious about it. However, now the other side of me, the social entrepreneur, businesswoman side of me, is really looking at social entrepreneurship and the tech space. I'm very interested in that because I'm a content creator. I'm online every day. I watch people's concepts get stolen, their intellectual property. It's just a free-for-all on this here internet. And currently, I think a lot of people don't see themselves as businesses the same way that, you know, Kim Kardashian does. But they are. And I think that as time goes on, more and more people are going to be branding themselves. So for example, opening up, I have a company. So I have the Chic Legal Geek Limited. Everything I do right now is small. But if I'm ever going to work with someone, there's going to be a contract involved. Even if it's just a small YouTube collaboration or whatever. Because I run myself like a business. I think more and more people are going to be running themselves like a business. And because I see that sort of happening, I want to be the barrister in that space. I really feel like I could dominate that field because these judges don't know what the hell they're talking about. I know barristers don't know what they're talking about when it comes to social media. So what needs to be explained is two things. One, people need to understand that all this like legal, all the stuff that you sort of separate yourself from, it applies to you. It applies to you because when a big company steals your shit, sorry, I didn't mean to swear, but the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, Instagram's going to turn around and say, oh, but if you actually read the terms and conditions, you don't own that content, we do. And now you're like, but my whole life was on there. And so judges, when they're applying unreasonable terms, for example, need to be educated and it needs to be normalized. And as far as that knowledge, I really do. I think if you could take a silk of like 20, 30 years working in whatever law, but they don't understand this space the way that I would say we do as just like a generation. Oh my God, you guys are so much younger than me. I feel so old, but you know what I mean? It's like our space. And so that's why I think our voice will dominate in that area. So that's where the business savvy, you know, side of me thinks and is leaning towards. But, you know, so I'm stuck in this space where I want to be working in this space, but that space technically doesn't exist because people aren't doing that yet. And yeah, so those are my two halves of my brain. I hope that made any sense.
No, it did. It was interesting. So we've got some questions.
Yay.
So one question is, can barristers form groups or are they all self-employed? Can you go into more depth explaining the whole self-employed thing?
Yeah, so this is a good question because the chamber's structure is a group. So it's basically a bunch of barristers saying, hey, let's come together, share some resources. You know, I'll put in a bit of money every month. Then we can have a building, some offices. We can have a clerk's team that gets work for all of us. And we can just make that work. How does that sound? So that fundamental structure is how the bar currently operates. You would think that you would just be able to work on your own and do the whole thing on your own. So it's like a weird idiosyncrasy that it has because it's like, yeah, we're a self-employed, independent profession, but oh, your fate in the profession is decided by a group. So it's very like weird like that. But so when it comes to forming groups, There are so many rules about forming your own chambers. Personally, for me, I want more barristers to do it. I want more barristers to just, with their barrister friends, get together and make a chambers and do it that way. Again, because I just really believe everybody can run themselves like a business. But currently, as it stands, that's the structure. So you are in a group, but you're on your own, if that makes any sense at all.
Cool. Does that make sense to everyone? Or is there any other questions about that?
Happy to clarify.
Thumbs up situation.
I'm just going to rotate slightly.
All right, we have another question. Since constitutional/public law is quite political, why did you go down the legal route as opposed to the political route when it comes to challenging these largely political issues?
That's a great question, because the fish that I want to fry are hidden inside the mechanisms of the separation of powers. So what I mean by that is, one thing that I'm very passionate about, our criminal justice system. Just as off the bat, I don't like the way it operates. I don't like the way it functions. However, what I understand now from what barristers do is that if there's any space that I can speak directly to the people responsible for finding that a certain law or application of a certain law is incorrect and unfair and declaring it unconstitutional, I can shake the whole freaking tree. The downside to that is, like, it's not as energetic and active as the political space. In the political space, you can campaign, you can move the needle actively. Whereas in this legal space, you have to do your research, you have to take your time, you have to wait for the case to come to you. But when it comes, you have to stay ready. So I chose the stay ready route because I thought, the knowledge is out there, I can read it. I can't contribute any more to existing knowledge. We know we know at this point. We know why it happens, we know what's going on. So when I realized, okay, I'm not I wrote a few articles and I've done articles and I've tried academic things, but I realized I like to consume knowledge and then relay it. That's what I'm like a function machine in that way. I like to take in and give out, take in and give out. So once I realized that about myself, I was like, okay, I don't think the activism political space is my space, because I get irritated when people don't want to listen to me. Like, I don't like that. So the idea of dedicating my time, and I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but the idea of my career being shaped around challenging people who don't even recognize my personhood, I can't. Like, I'm too sensitive, maybe. I don't know, but I can't. So, but what I can do is, when there's a judge in front of me who has to listen to me because I've got the certificate, I've got the gown, I've been instructed, he is legally obligated to listen to me. There I go with the he again. But they are obligated to listen. They have to listen. And in that one space, if I do it right, I can achieve what I want to achieve. Because if it's there, they can't say no. When it's all I feel like in the political space, then you've got smoke and mirrors, you've got all of this disingenuous stuff. But when you're in the court, there's no hiding now. So that's why I want to do it. That's why I want to do it that way. Because I'm like, I may not be listened to out there, but once I'm in here, I am your learned friend. Period. You can't disrespect me. You have to respect me. That's what the bar is founded on. I don't care. I don't care how you feel about it. Like, you have to. So that's why I want to do that, because the people who don't realize I know what I'm talking about, it cringes my soul. I can't. And that's why I'm like, I want to do this route. It has its own challenges, like I said, getting that respect in the first place. But once you've got it, I feel like I can do a lot with that.
Awesome. Okay, another question someone has asked is, at what stage of your career did you fully realize what area you want to specialize in?
It's a great question. Okay, so like I said, at university and through law school, bar school, I'd always been interested in the state and constitutional law. So what I was doing was sort of falling in line with that. I would say when it comes to knowing your area, it comes to you, and God, this sounds so stupid, but it comes to you because of who you are. So what you're naturally inclined towards, having a life outside of your law school, your legal studies is essential, because that life that you have is what's going to lead you and guide you and help you understand yourself and where you want to go with your career. So for me, like I said, you know how I said I split my brain into two? Yes, the whole way through university, I was studying. But it's only until I left bar school, left university, and I started this content creation stuff, and I'm always doing it. So now, as the law changes and develops, I'm literally lined up perfectly for this new area of law that didn't exist when I started. So I would say that can work the same way. You know, there's a lot of people who are at the bar who have said things like, yeah, I started my career doing X law, and then it so happened, sorry, my mum is coming, but it so happens that I got this opportunity to work on this case, and then boom, that was it. From then on, I only ever did that kind of work. So that eureka moment, knowing what you want to do, I don't think you can ever estimate when it's going to come. I think you can start, find the trajectory you want to follow, stick with that one, and start, and then see what happens as you go along. And seeing what happens as you go along is, I think, a really effective strategy, and it's worked really well for me. And that's why probably next year, what I want to be doing when I apply is basically saying, I've been running a business for at least a year. I've been managing contracts, so I understand the commercial realities and what's needed. I can say that because of what I was doing. So I would say, focus on, if there's anything that remotely, if it's crime, follow that. If it's family, follow that. But allow yourself to be open and to be swayed, and for opportunities to arise and for you to follow those opportunities. I hope that's helpful.
Sure. We have one more question before I get back to the ones that I have planned, so, and then people can continue and we'll bring it up later. Are there any other opportunities for one to be funded through the GDL and the bar exam? For example, with solicitor work, if you get a training contract from a certain firm, they pay for the GDL and the LPC.
I understand the question. So there are scholarships from the Inns of Court that I mentioned before. And on top of that, there are opportunities for you to have funding through your law school. There are opportunities for you to get funding, for example, with the BPTC, if you were to do it as an LLM, you can get the postgraduate student finance. What you're mentioning there is frustrating because it doesn't exist. And it should, but it doesn't. So what solicitors have, we don't. They don't have somewhere where they can apply for pupilage 2 years early and the chambers will cover them. That's why with pupilage awards, you talk about the drawdown. So the drawdown is them saying, oh, look, here's money we'll give you now because we know you just finished your studies or you're studying. But it's retrospective. So it's a challenging one to finance. A lot of people they just do something else and keep applying for scholarships. And also a lot of people do it part-time and just work alongside it. It's tough, but it's a way that they can fund it. But it's expensive, and it's a real barrier to the profession personally. It's a huge barrier because it's like that big financial elephant in the room, and people have different ways of managing it. I had both parental contributions and a scholarship. But without parental contributions, I didn't know what I was going to do. So, you know, I'm sorry I can't be more helpful and tell you that we have what solicitors have, but we don't, and it's a big problem. And people are aware of it, but it's a big problem. I'm sorry I don't have anything better to say.
Okay, so would you mind taking us through your journey in terms of university? Like, what exactly did you do in terms of extracurriculars? Did you start preparing for the bar then? Your mooting experience? Things like that.
Great question. I was keen for the bar all the way through uni. So I did history and politics at Warwick. And then I was in first year, I was in the law soc. I was first year rep. Second year, I was editor of the features section of our newspaper, and I was non-law rep in law soc, and I was charity sec for lacrosse. And then in final year, I was president of lacrosse. I mooted every year at university. I participated in every competition that I could, even when I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Your girl was still there. And I was, working on those. And I kept myself, I didn't do any mini pupilages or anything like that, but in the summer of first year, I volunteered at Citizens Advice Bureau. And in the summer of second year, I think I didn't do anything like crazy legal that summer. I think I just worked in a pub, which was still a good experience. And then final year, I did the summer after final year, I did my first mini pupilage.
Awesome. So, do you have any advice for what people can do at university to prepare? Is there anything you do more? And also, on top of this, with mini pupilages, when do you recommend people starting to look into doing that?
Okay, I'll start with the second one. Minis, do them anytime you can get them. If you meet a barrister and you like them and they like you, ask them to just do a mini with them. So just try and do minis whenever. They're always helpful. There's no time, just do it. If you can apply, go look on the Chamber's mini pupilage policy. They'll write sometimes, we only like to offer them to second years and above. I don't know, just have a look. The first question, which I've forgotten now, but I know, can you please remind me what it was? I know what it is.
What can people do in university?
Thank you. Do what you want. Don't just do what you want. Like, stay hitting those books, which I know you guys are, because it's Cambridge, you don't have a choice. Stay hitting those books. Make sure no matter what goes on around you in your personal life, your social life, make sure those grades are being finessed. And by doing that and embracing yourself, if you play clarinet, go to Clarinet Society. I don't care what it is that you do. Be yourself and get real comfortable with yourself. Try and know who you are. And I know it's hard because it's uni. Like no one knows who they are, like ever. But try and get a good firm grip on at least who you want to be, if not who you are. Because that knowledge of yourself is gonna do you a world of good. Because once you're at bar school, it's like imposter syndrome is just there waiting for you to make you feel some kind of way. So the best way you can prep yourself at university is by practicing, focusing on yourself, staying in your own lane. By that I mean getting yourself out of the mindset of, I have to do this because X has done that. The more you invest in yourself at university and get that sense of self-confidence and understanding of who you are, and any opportunities that you have to do public speaking, debating, oral advocacy, take them, grab them with both hands. Dive into your books, allow yourself to be inspired, whether it's art outside of your studies, going to theatre, I don't care what it is, stay inspired. And then once you get into the pupilage rat race, you know who you are because you've stayed yourself, and that's what's gonna help you navigate it. So if I could go back to university again, Oh my God. I would not talk to any boys at all. And I'm not even saying that as a joke. Like, I genuinely would have spent more time making music, you know, being artistic. I would have spent more time finding out who Blessing is. That sounds so meta, I'm so sorry. But that's what is going to help you the most at university. Because you have just this space to do that. That once life comes at you fast once you're in law school. Now you're next to this person that's got a double, triple, quadruple first, and they've done this and that, and they've done this, and then you're like, ah! But if you know yourself firmly, you can weather that. You know what I mean? You can get through that. And that's the best way uni can prep you. But stay hitting the books. Please stay hitting the books. Please.
We've got some more questions, which is great. So what lessons did you learn from the application process for pupilage this year? And I assume in previous years as well. And how would you apply for it in the next application cycle? What would you change?
Okay, thank you for that question. Because I actually haven't taken time to think about that yet because I've been so busy, like, just not caring. I don't know if that makes sense. I had to not care for myself. I had to distance myself from it and be like, it is what it is. My first round of applications, just write them better, was my feedback for myself. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, good. Okay. So my first round of applications, my feedback, and I got feedback from one of my mentors, just write better. So that was that. Now this year is an interesting year because I'm kind of salty about it. If I'm being 100% honest, I'm salty because I know that whenever I say the word social media, people they automatically think things of me. So I'm at a stage where I'm visible, I'm known enough, or if you Google me, it's not that hard to see I'm on things. But I have felt very much so that the bar is, like I said, it's about 15 to 20 years behind where I need it to be right now in order for it to accept me. So my challenge for next year is to value my own niche, get myself experience more, because I've for all my experience up until now is for public law. I've given my all to public law, and I'm just like, the respect is not mutual. So I'm like, okay, now it's the time for me to step. I love it. Like, I love public. It's all I've ever known. But I know that in the commercial space, in the business space, I'm very valuable. And in order for me to lead with my value next year in my applications, I need to throw myself 150% into being an entrepreneur, into being a businesswoman, into all of those things. Does that make sense? And that's the challenge that I've got. Because as far as writing a good application, if I just say so myself, I can do that. You know, my mentor was like, yeah, Blessing, I can put money on the fact of you getting pupilage. But it's this thing of being a big fish in a small pond. You can either keep fighting for the small amount of water in the pond, or you can be like, I'm a big fish, I'm gonna go find a new pond, kind of thing. So that's the stage that I'm currently at. I know that when I send off public law applications, you know, I'm average. That sounds odd for me to say, but do you guys know what I mean when I say that? I'm average in that space. It's not unusual to have an intelligent person who completed uni, then did the GDL, then did the BPTC, and worked for a paralegal in 6 months and has won a couple competitions. Like, that's not that revolutionary. I mean, it's amazing, don't get me wrong, I'm proud of myself. But in terms of the applications that they're getting, it's not like, you know? So, but in terms of that other space, no one can do that the way I can do that. I'm the only person that can, I mean, there's other people doing it, don't get me wrong. I'm just, speaking for myself. I'm the only person that does what I do, because no one else is running my Instagrams and my YouTubes and consulting people for their businesses and their personal branding. No one's doing that other than me. So I'm like, now I've got to back myself 100% and invest and focus in that. So when I'm applying next year, I'm applying from a position of strength. I'm applying from a position of, one, you've never seen this before, and two, here is the evidence of why I'm valuable to you. Does that make sense? So that's my challenge. And I'm scared, but I'm prepared. I'm ready. I'm ready to just like get into my businesswoman mindset and to spend the next year like basically drilling out. And don't tell my mum this, but I don't intend to work as a paralegal anymore. After this summer, I've done a year of paralegaling. It was cute. It was fun. I enjoyed, but I'm moving on. I want to go into do, like I said, tech, digital media. I want to get time experience in that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So the question I was asked, do you think it's essential to take the BPTC in the location where you plan to work in the future, or study where it's more convenient for you? For example, if you have one closer to home but don't intend to work in that city.
Right. Sensibly, stay where it's most convenient for you. It's expensive to move and to sustain yourself, and the course is expensive. However, there is a whole thing between different regions. Practicing there is a very different thing. So oftentimes, if you were one place, so for example, let's say you study in London, and then you apply to Bristol, they're going to be like, why? Why were you in London? Or are you sure you don't want to practice in London? So it's a thing of, if it won't make or break anything. You will be fine. You will still network. You will still go do events. Inns of court, I mean, you'll have to travel in for some of your Inns of court events, which will be expensive, but they cover it sometimes. It won't make or break your choice, but your future. But if you have a choice and you want to practice in a certain area, go study there. It'll only do you good for networking, getting opportunities, understanding the way the legal community moves in that area. It'll help you out.
Awesome. Okay, so on your social media page, you mentioned that you are media mogul in the making. How do you synthesize media and law? Do you feel like you'd get into media in the long run? I mean, you kind of covered this, but it'd be cool to get into more detail.
Thank you. It makes me laugh, because sometimes I write things on my Instagram and it's like for myself, and then I'm reminded that, oh wow, actual people read this and like they see it too. So thank you for that question. How do I synthesize it? Well, I synthesize it like I mentioned earlier. That's what I do. It's my skill. It's my talent. It's just my thing. So because it's my thing, it's not really a case of making my legal career synthesize with it. It has to synthesize because it's who I am. And I have this constant conversation with various people where they communicate it to me that it's the other way around. Like, my social media stuff has to fit with my bar. But that's not the case, because if the bar was to go away tomorrow, what would I still be doing? So that's, for me, I put them together in that way. I put it together because I say, this is what I do, and this is who I'm bringing to the bar. And that's why being a media mogul in the making, patent pending, I know that when I'm a barrister, you best believe you're gonna see me like out there. That's how I'm gonna get work. That's how I'm gonna be known. When my cases are reported, I'm gonna have blog posts on my cases. I'm with a bottom link with a direct link to contact my clerk. That's how I will market myself. I fully intend to be doing things like radio appearances. Shout out to Radio 4. I've been on Radio 4 before, just saying. Small flex. Because I never talk about that. But anyway, moving on. I will be out there. You will hear me. You will see me. You will know me. Whatever. If it's tech that I'm doing, I will be there. I will be at the conferences. I'll be a keynote speaker here, there, and wherever. Because that's how I'm going to make my barrister money. Yes, there's other money I'll make. But my clients are there, so I will be there. It's the same way with a lot of these barristers that do public law. They're at all of the public, networking events. They're there. If you go to these panels and conferences, they're there because they're recruiting they're marketing for themselves. So I synthesize it in that way. I personally believe that if it wasn't for me and my media stuff, I don't think that I would be as competitive in the bar field. Not because I'm not clever, but just because it's a competitive space. This one woman told me one time that I was a bog standard 2-1 from Warwick. And I was going to need to do more to be impressive. I mean, she didn't know anything about me, so she didn't know who she was speaking to. But the sentiment that she was giving is that being brilliantly clever is average here. You need to tell us why we're impressed. And so that's a unique thing. So that's why when it comes to this stuff, I don't mind that there's certain barristers that are like, I don't know. They don't concern me. What I know is that when I'm seen by the right set of people, they will be like, actually, the fact that she can build a website in a day and basically do all of these things is actually really helpful for us. She can market pretty much anything. This is helpful for us. So that's how I put them together. I hope that answered the question.
Cool. Another question we have is, can you tell us about the process of applying for bar school scholarships? When did you apply? What does the process entail? And then we have a second and third part, but I'll ask that after you've asked me. Okay, I can answer that quickly. The process is simple. You send in an application. Some Inns of Court they basically say, you can't get a scholarship unless your application is and then we accept it and then we invite you to interview. So some of them say that. Others are more like you apply and then you'll definitely get an interview. So the one common denominator is the interview. You will have one interview. There will be some form of exercise, whether it's an advocacy exercise or something else. And once the interview is finished, they will decide and then they will give you the money or they won't give you the money. So it's basically that simple. Application, interview. Application asks similar questions to your bar school application. Why do you want to be a barrister? Blah, 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 blah. You answer them, yeah. And then that's how it works. Cool. When did you apply for your scholarship?
Around May. The deadline's around May time. So the deadline's around now-ish.
Is that in your last year of university?
Yes, in the last year. You asked me a basic question. I'm so sorry, guys. Last year of university, around May time.
Cool. So do you think building up a social media profile / public presence has disadvantaged you during any part of the process?
I don't like to say disadvantaged, but it's separated the people who rock with me from the people that don't quite sharply. And I'm actually quite okay with that. There was a point where I was worried, and sometimes, my parents are yelling at me, like, why are you always so vain? And I'm like, the thing is, I'm aware that, my favorite hobby is to irritate people, like people who think they're too clever to learn. So I had an interview and I didn't need to ask this question. It's just that I wasn't particularly interested in going there anyway, if they weren't going to understand that I do this 24 hours a day. So I asked them, I said, how does Chambers use social media? I wanted to hear that they are aware about how it makes them money. And they were like, yeah, some people do videos and da-da-da. It was this one guy, and I know the guy. I just pretended I didn't know. And it was very like, their approach was, this guy was like, oh, I don't use it because I don't want to be out there. And it's like, okay, cute, but that's not what I asked you. So it does disadvantage me in the sense that people who don't see why it's valuable don't understand why it's valuable. However, like I said, I don't sweat, because stuff like this global pandemic that's just hit and basically has almost decimated the entire bar has made it quite obvious why it's very necessary to be able to function and survive in the virtual space. So I don't need to change my mindset. In my view, the world will move for me because it has to, because I'm not moving. So it's either or at this point. And I'm I'm confident enough in myself that I'm like, any chambers that's like, nah, we don't want her, we don't want to get involved with all that, I'm like, cool, didn't want to be there anyway.
Awesome. So what inn did you choose and why? What should we look for?
Inner Temple, because their history is just amazing. Like they're active, they're as modern as they can be. I feel like obviously it's an institution, you know, there's still some, but they're just innovative, and they've completely are refurbishing the entire inn to turn it into more of like an educational space, like a hub, kind of like what you have on campus. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm glad I chose this inn. And if it wasn't Inner, I would have picked Middle Temple for the same reasons.
Cool. So Sharon has asked, I know that there's a 50-50 split in terms of lawyers coming from law and non-law backgrounds, but in the transition between finishing your degree and starting your GDL, did you feel like the transition was rough, whether it's in terms of content or just a general stress of learning so much media?
Oh yeah, it was rough. Like 7 subjects with 7 exams in the space of 2 weeks. I got used to functioning at with heart palpitations. Like it was nuts. But yeah, I mean, I luckily I kind of figured from what it was gonna be that it was gonna be that way. I wasn't that surprised. I was like, this is gonna suck. Like, so I kind of mentally prepared. And yeah, it was tough. It was tough, but it's doable. If you break the knowledge down, find a way to, you don't need to learn it. Like I always say, people with the GDL, you'll learn it when you need to learn it. At least for where I did, because we did the exams right at the end. If you do the exams all the way through, that's a whole different situation. You're gonna have to be on it in a different way. Whereas for my case, it was a case of collect your information carefully, make your notes, save them in your Google Drive, understand what you need to know, and then when it comes to revision, you get like 2 months. Then you just cram, memorize, flashcards, work. You'll get it in your brain. I'm pretty sure that's my mom. Where is Frank? No, I don't know where he is. Sorry, they're looking for the baby. Yeah, I hope that answers it and it's helpful.
Cool. So why do you think it's important to be a barrister today, given current affairs like Brexit, coronavirus? Awesome. So how realistic is the British law barrister scene from what we see in shows, the media, like Amal Clooney and her work, How to Get Away with Murder, Suits?
It's all lies. Lies. False propaganda. No. Barristers are tired, overworked, extremely stressed. It's not that glamorous. It's not that well organized. Unless maybe you're doing commercial. In that case, you guys have had, I don't know, X many months to prep for your trial. Or same with public law, you've had a good amount of time. Those TV shows are helpful for the sense of having something legal you can watch and to test your knowledge, like it's fun. But mini pupilages are the only thing that's going to show you the reality of this bar place. So try and do this as much as you can.
Okay. Specifically for Amal Clooney, I've noticed this type of disdain in terms of her being categorized as a human rights lawyer, all of the glamorous stuff with like the UN and The Hague. How realistic is that in particular? Like, if someone wanted to work with the UN?
Oh, you can. Don't get me wrong. Like, most of my friends, like, I have this one friend who's basically Amal Clooney. Like, that's what she does. She's worked at the UN. She's been all around the places. I've got other friends who have done that. It's not uncommon. You can do that work. But, sorry if my brother's loud music is irritating. You can do that work, but the glamour, the glitz, like, don't expect that. Human rights lawyers, I spent a lot of time networking with human rights lawyers, really interesting people. I think there's a fundamental, with social justice. Bisa, can you turn that down? These 13-year-olds, I just can't. I can't. My soul.
Don't worry about it.
Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Bisa, I'm doing a talk. Can you turn it down or off? I'm like doing a talk for university. Thank you. I succeeded. Yeah. So yeah, the glitz and the glamour not guaranteed. It's a small world in human rights law, so you can be a hero amongst like your peers. Like you'll have a claim, and there's so many beautiful initiatives I love. Like there's awards and recognition and a real massive show of respect within that pocket of people. So you can feel the glamour of the role in the camaraderie you have with your peers and the respect that you get from your peers, but it's not glamorous work.
What does a week in the life, this is another question asked by someone, what does a week in the life of a prospective pupil barrister look like? Do you still have time to fit in other things you're passionate about?
Funnily enough, I have a video on this very subject. You can see me at bar school for a week and what my life looks like. Generally speaking, I'm not going to come and die for the bar. I won't. But I used to. But at this stage in my life, my other things are, my personal development is what's going to make me good. So my weeks are, I work 9 to 5 as a paralegal. And when I'm finished with that, I'm editing videos, I'm recording vlogs, I'm doing this, that, and the other on my Instagram, I'm staying active. And those are the things that motivate me and keep me going. So what I learn at my job, what I learn from my side hustles, and I feed those together to mean that when I do sit down and it's time for maybe a pupilage application, I know what I'm going to say because of the time I've spent on myself.
Okay, so have you ever considered any other careers within the legal field aside from being a barrister and aside from being a paralegal?
Nope, I couldn't be convinced.
So what's next for you? What's next for Blessing in terms of career trajectory?
Take over the world, one subscriber at a time. No, I'm joking. I'm not actually joking. That is my main plan currently. But career-wise is to, like I said, smash being a businesswoman. Because I think that smashing being a businesswoman is gonna sort of get rid of the last the last hurdle I need to jump, which is that pupilage, because I don't like people to get confused about not how smart I am, but how capable I am. And so I'm like, the more evidence I can gather by investing in myself, the more this particular stage of my career is going to be easier to navigate. So what's next for me is, you just see me everywhere. I'm going to be actively working. I want to try and do my next stage once I'm finished. I'm working on a public inquiry now for a local authority. So once I'm finished with this, I want to try and get a cool tech job. I want to go like work for Spotify or something. I keep talking about working for Spotify. I'm manifesting that. I want to go work for Spotify. So I just want to be where things are happening is where I'm going to be. So that's what I'm doing next.